On this episode of Common Mystics, we discuss spellcasting, our meeting with famous psychic medium Kim Russo, and the origin story of our podcast. I'm Jennifer James.
I'm Jill Stanley.
We're psychics.
We're sisters.
And we are Common Mystics. And we're excited today to talk to you about how we discovered that we are more powerful psychically when we're together.
It's true. Let's get right into it. The first time we used our psychic ability together intentionally. When was that?
That happened for the first time when we were living together around the year 2001. You and I had rented a house for about 3 years with our mother and my husband.
Right.
And the four of us lived there together.
And we had a happy home.
We had our ups and downs, but it was a fun time.
I'm sure your husband would have some thoughts on that.
He does, but he's not in this podcast. So we had fun. But we had a visitor.
A visitor? We had an invader. So we had a family member that lived out of town, and her name Tara, was going to visit us for 2 weeks. So Mom sat us down and was like, hey, girls, we're going to have a visitor for about 2 weeks. And Jen and I were like, okay, fine. 2 weeks, we can do 2 weeks.
2 weeks. We can do 2 weeks. We weren't thrilled about it.
Not ideal.
It wasn't a huge house. We would have to share space, but that's fine. Whatever. 2 weeks, we could do it.
Right.
But right away, she was showing blatant disrespect to those of us who were living there. And it started with little things. Like, I would use the brown bananas to make banana bread. Tara would throw out the brown bananas every time. And then I had this plant in the kitchen that did not like direct light. Every morning, Tara would open up the blinds so that the direct light would be on my plant. And if I didn't notice it, my plant would be dying above the sink in the kitchen.
Every morning when I was getting coffee, I walked upstairs to Jennifer closing the blinds and explaining to Tara that the plant will die. It does not like direct sunlight. That happened every morning, Monday through Friday.
As well as cleaning the coffee grounds off the wall, because when Tara would make coffee and throw away the old grounds, she inevitably would get them all over the wall surrounding the trash can. Again, blatant disrespect.
Little things.
When she was When she was burning candles in our basement where she was staying, she would use my fine china that I just got from my wedding a few years before. Now, if you're going to burn candles, you could find, I don't know, a million other more appropriate things to do it on other than someone's brand new china. Just rude.
And it's not like our house isn't filled with candle holders, honestly.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So what did you experience?
Well, this is a safe space. So I'm going to tell you. One time, I had bought a Weber's birthday cake for my then boyfriend, and I had it stored.
Best cake in the state of Illinois.
It's a true statement. That's not hyperbole. It is the best state.
I stand by that statement.
Yes.
Best cake.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so
you had the best cake in the world, basically, in your refrigerator.
Downstairs in the basement, because I had a bedroom in the basement, our family room was in the basement, and a utility room with the extra fridge was in the basement, and that fridge was holding that birthday cake. It was not presented to my boyfriend yet, and that cake was minding its own business in that fridge. And I hear in the middle of the night someone creep and open up the fridge door and carry that cake upstairs. So I follow it. I knew something insidious was happening. And I walked in the kitchen to Tara in the moonlight with no lights on, eating the birthday cake out of the box with her bare hands like a friggin' raccoon. And I was like, dude, what are you doing? And she's like, Jill, thin people can eat cake. And I was like, not this cake, not this time. So I smuggle the cake away, go downstairs, and I'm like, oh my gosh, are you serious right now? So I ended up having just to eat the cake and not giving it to the boyfriend because now it's destroyed.
Well, you got to do what you got to do at that point. You don't throw out cake that good.
I was so disappointed when I was eating it the next day, shaking my head.
Damn her.
Didn't have to be like this.
My precious.
So that happened.
There was another situation, though, that happened in your bedroom.
Oh, yes. Again. Safe space.
Are you still upset about the cake? Too soon? Do you need more time? Can we pause this right now?
Okay, so at the time I was smoking like a smoky lalas. I was a pack deep a day in Newport. And so the only room in the house that you were able to smoke, which was really nice of my family, was my bedroom. And so Tara was joining me for a cigarette in my bedroom. And she had asked me, she's like, do you think I should marry the guy that I just met? And I was like, well, Tara, you just met the guy. So I don't know, maybe wait 3 months. How about that? And she was making eye contact with me as she put her cigarette out on my down comforter. And she goes, oops. Uh-huh. And so I was like, you need to get out of my room like right now. And she was like, I don't have to go anywhere. And I was like, no, you do. And so I picked her up. I say picked her up, but I did. I directed her out of my room via her shoulders. Because she wouldn't leave.
You bodily removed her.
It needed to be done.
You removed her bodily from your room.
She's lucky I didn't remove
I don't
her
blame
bodily after the cake incident. Just
right.
saying. I think I showed extreme self-control. Anyway, so then the guy, instead of Tara leaving after 2 weeks, the guy, 3 months in, the boyfriend that she wants to marry comes to stay with us too. So now not only did she not leave, then she brings her boyfriend, and the boyfriend's like this 6'7" man that had just recently gone through this physical transformation of health and wellness. So he lost a lot of weight and he's really into working out. And he thinks Tara is like the bee's knees, the prize.
Shiznizzle.
His little trophy girl. And that he was going to defend her by coming after me physically, hearing the incident of how I had to walk her out of my room after she burned a hole in my down blanket.
So basically, he was going to beat up a girl.
Yeah, he was going to beat me up specifically to defend Tara's honor. And so one Saturday, I had been staying away from the house because I didn't want to deal with all this nonsense. I don't need that drama. So I was staying at a friend's house, but I came home on a Saturday and no one was home. And I was able to do a couple loads of laundry instead of paying for it somewhere in the city. So I was like, I'll just do my laundry real quick, get in and out. And I ended up taking a nap in my bedroom. Well, Tara and her boyfriend arrived back at the house and took advantage of me being vulnerable alone in the house, but also asleep. So they barge into my bedroom and they start yelling at me about the just horrible things. And I'm asleep and I'm like, what the hell is going on? So I get up and I'm like, you need to leave my room. And they would not leave, to the point where they wouldn't even let me leave my room. So I actually pass through them as I'm calling the police on my flip cell phone. So I flip it up and I call 911 and I'm on the phone with the dispatcher as I was able to pass underneath the man's arm to get upstairs. And at this time, I'm running as fast as I can. I'm trying to get into my mom's bedroom as Jennifer comes home.
Right. So I walk through the door and I see this scene of Jill running up the stairs being in a hot pursuit by Tara and her boyfriend. Now, as soon as I walked in the door, I knew I was interrupting something and it kind of changed the energy.
Right.
You know, that they saw that I was there witnessing this.
See, the problem is that this whole time that Tara's been living with us, I've been explaining to my mom that she's not okay. She's doing things that are disturbing, and Tara is making it seem like I'm crazy because she's only doing them when no one's around to witness it. So my mom thinks that, oh, Jill's just being dramatic. And it's true. I have a dramatic flair. That's fair.
True.
But I was legit being terrorized by this person.
You were not making this up. And
Right.
I saw firsthand. So I became your ally. Like, this is not in Jill's head. This is really happening.
So the police come that day, and the police tell Tara and her boyfriend that they can't be at the house unless our mom is there. Jennifer and I's mom is there, Stella. So they leave. But what ends up happening is that mom believes me, number one, because then Jen says, no, Mom, this is really happening. And so Mom tells Tara and her boyfriend that they can't stay at the house anymore, but Mom is going to pay for them to stay at a hotel.
Now, our mother was working 2 jobs. She did not have any extra money to put into a hotel room for these 2 people. It so infuriating.
And again, this is like a quarter of the year, and this person is not leaving. Like, she was supposed to be
and she's still
here.
coming to the house.
Yes.
She and her boyfriend are still coming to the house. Sure, they're sleeping at the hotel, but they're still there.
Right.
Like, just to like rub salt in the wound. See, we do belong here.
Right. So what else was happening as that was going on? What was going on with you and Tara?
Well, my husband and I, we were living in that house with you and Mom, but we were looking to buy our own, and we were actually in the process of buying a townhome.
You guys are trying to get out?
We were.
They had an escape plan, a strategy.
Exactly right. And when you're in the process of buying a house, you have to go through all kinds of credit checks. Well, come to find out that someone had opened loans in my name and wasn't paying on them.
That's
in other words,
weird.
Isn't that odd? Come to find out that it was Tara who had stolen my social security number and my identity to take out, upwards of about $5,000 worth of loans that were in default.
So what happens? Like, did you end up buying your house?
It's a huge headache. Yeah, I did end up buying the house. It was a huge headache to get it off my credit, but we were able to do it when we confronted her because we had the documents and saw her signature. I could recognize her signature. It wasn't my signature.
Did she admit it?
She did. She admitted it later.
Ugh.
But we're kind of off topic. So
okay, sorry.
I find this out, and it was devastating because it was going to potentially ruin my chances for buying a home.
Yeah, everything was just, it was raw. We were desperate. Mom was paying for this hotel room. It was just out of control, and no one was helping us.
It was.
So at this time, I say to Jennifer, kind of as a joke, because Jennifer isn't into any of this at this point, I was like, Jen, we need to do a spell. Mm-hmm. And Jennifer said, to my surprise,
hell yeah, we are. We are going to take matters into our own hands and banish this person from our lives.
Exactly. So I do the research and I try to find a spell in like the early 2000s internet. And I think that I find one that can work for us with some tweaking. So I approached Jen again and I'm like, I think I found one that would work for us. So I believe it was the night of a new moon.
And Jill, just to be clear, we were not trying to hurt her.
No.
We didn't want to do anything bad to her. We just wanted her away from us.
We did not want to be negatively affected by her and her bullshit any longer. So we gather the supplies, and at the phase of the new moon, Jen and I are inside my bedroom in Woodridge, and we are sitting knee to knee, cross-legged on the floor of my bedroom. And in between us is a written out intention. It was a prayer that just says, please protect us and get this person's energy out of our space. And we had a white candle. We had some of her hair from a hairbrush. We had a picture of her, and we had a ribbon or twine. So the spell was, we were supposed to say the intention that we had written down. We were going to light the candle, burn the picture, the hair with the candle. Then we wrapped up the ashes from the hair and the picture in the affirmation around the candle, and then bound the candle with a ribbon or string. As we continuously meditate on that intention, saying the prayer over and over and over and over again. And we were supposed to sit there in that space until we felt convinced that it had taken hold. Then, in the light of the new moon, we were supposed to bury the candle and its contents as it was wrapped inside in the ground. So that's what we did. So
we were sitting knee to knee, saying this intention over and over and over again. And at some point, we both look up and we looked into each other's eyes, and that's when you knew that something was really happening there.
Right. At first we were saying it out loud, and then we had our eyes closed and we were saying it in our head. And at some point, Jennifer and I looked at each other and it felt like it sealed the deal. We knew that we knew it was working. There felt like there was a dense, thick energy between us. Like there was really, like this was happening.
Yeah. Yeah. It was insane. It was insane how much power I felt was there right there between us.
So we got up and we went in the backyard and we buried. And I don't even think we spoke because we knew what we had to do at that point. So in silence, we went outside and we buried it. And it's still there today. We have not disturbed.
Yeah, we never moved it. And by the way, Tara moved back out of town altogether and didn't come back at all until about 15 years later for our mother Stella's funeral. And then she left again. So I call that a win.
Yay, effective. Yeah.
I think what was so important, Jill, about the effectiveness of that spell was the intention. You and I were so single-minded and so in sync in terms of what the intention was, and we were so motivated by all of the negative energy and the way she was affecting us and our mother. What do you think?
After Tara left, I remember saying to Mom, Jennifer and I did that. And she was so mad at us. She's like,
really
you don't know
mad.
what you're doing. Stop fooling around with this stuff. And I was like, it worked, G. I was like, it worked. Like, you're welcome.
It did work. It did. Anyway, so that was one very notable time in our history together when we knew that we amplify each other's powers. When was another one? Another time.
My favorite. I love when you tell this story. It's our Kim Russo story when she became our BFF.
Yay, Kim Russo. Oh my gosh. I have loved Kim Russo for a long time. She's on TV. She does celebrity ghost stories. She takes different celebrities into different locations and helps them understand why they might have been haunted at a certain point. But she's just so lovely and just so gracious and so talented. I've always liked her.
She's so good at what she does. And it's really about the celebrity or the person she's trying to help and not about her at all.
Right. So you actually had gotten tickets to see her. Was it 2015?
It was 2015. And
yeah, she was going to be in Detroit.
Right. And I had bought tickets for me and my best friend to go. But for reasons that we're not going to discuss, my best friend couldn't go. So I called Mom and I was like, I bought this ticket to see Kim Russo and I have no one to go with me now. And my mom was like, you need to invite your sister. And the thing is, at the time, I was not feeling Jen. She was mean to me. I was like, Mom, I don't want to deal with this.
Right, right. Our relationship was a little strained at that time. And I think it was, I don't want to get into it, but it wasn't just me and it wasn't just you. We were reliving some baggage from our chaotic childhood and we were kind of in patterns that weren't healthy.
Right. So at the time, Mom suggested Jen. I was like, ugh, fine, Jennifer. And so Jen was like, yeah. And she actually paid for the ticket, which was nice because I wasn't expecting that. But so Jen was going to come to my house on a Saturday night and we were going to drive the following morning, a Sunday, to Detroit to see Kim Russo and for her to do a demonstration to the audience. So Jen,
right.
Saturday night, you drive up.
Right. So that night I drive up to your house and I remember saying, let's get our psychic on. Let's get ready for tomorrow. So we were sitting on your couch.
Feet to feet.
Feet to feet. Feet to feet. And we were talking and we had wine and we were just talking about...
We're talking about dreams. We're talking about
and experiences.
Past life experiences.
Past life, right, type things. And I remember saying that I feel a close connection with France, specifically the south of France. And I'd never been there and I have no reason to feel a connection to it. And I just wonder about if that's because I had a past life experience there. And you talked about New Orleans
right.
in a similar
manner,
right?
And I felt like I felt that same way about New Orleans. And we were talking about Kindle because I had our family dog, Kindle, Jennifer ended up taking care of in her later days. And we were talking about Kindle and how Kindle loves Jennifer.
Well, and how we wonder, too, if she's around sometimes. Mm-hmm. Remember? Like, if she's around us, because sometimes we swear that she is, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. We also discussed if we got a chance to talk to her because there was no guarantees, what would we ask her?
Right. That's right.
So
That's right. That was a big part of it.
In her show, when she's like helping people understand the hauntings that they experience, she will say, I think that you're psychic. I think you're a medium. And so what my big question, I was like, do you think she's going to think I'm a medium? And so that was my question. What were your questions?
Right. Well, you at the time were researching or trying to find our dad. And I was 16 when he left town, and you were 9. So, we had no idea where he was, and you were doing genealogy, and it would have been great to find him. So the problem was you didn't know what you were looking for. We didn't even know if he was still alive.
Right.
So I think my question, or our question, would be to Kim Russo, is our dad alive or dead?
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
And this was in 2015. Mm-hmm. So those were the big questions that we had. Does that sum it up? We also knew, because our grandmother had just recently died, our grandmother Irina, and we have a bonus pod about her too. But I think you and I both knew that if anybody comes through for us, it's going to be Grandma.
Absolutely. If this was going to happen, we knew that Grandma was going to make this happen. So we kind of put it out in the universe, like our drunken affirmations, like, Grandma.
Exactly. Grandma, come out for us. Come through for us.
So
it's true. That's what we did.
Right. So
the next morning we get up, we get packed up. We're going to drive to Detroit. It's a few hours, right? We get in the car, we start driving. And then I ask you, Jill, did you bring those crystals?
Right. Because in the show, Kim will gift crystals like rocks, like quartz, to her guests. So we were going to gift her, if we got the opportunity, with crystals. So I picked some out and I left them, unfortunately, on the living room coffee table. So I said no.
Exactly. So we left the crystals at home, unfortunately. But I was like, it's all right. It's all right. We don't want to be late. It's fine. We don't need the crystals. So we get there and we're a little early, and we park. And I remember
we are literally hopping out of the car.
We are so charged. We are totally.
People get out of
like
our
buzzing
way
across the.
They literally get out of our way when they see us coming. I am a very tall individual, and couple that with the energy of what we were feeling, like literally people were staring at us and we were hopping like Barbie dolls.
So anyway, we get in there and we're seated about 6 rows back in the center,
which I think are good seats.
That was a little. Well, you know what? I was wondering, because usually when you see demonstrations like this by psychics, usually they read the outside. They read the front, they read the sides on the aisles, and we weren't on an aisle. So I was like, we really need to like project our energy. So you and I were sitting like totally straight. You and I were like sitting up all straight, and we were just like smiling and just like
sending out vibes.
We were probably like
ridiculous.
Yes, like vibrating, like sending. We looked ridiculous. So Kim Russo comes on the stage, and she starts her show, and she's pacing back and forth on the stage. She's talking about her philosophy, her process, how she works, and she says, if you've ever felt a draw to an area, perhaps a place you've never been, it might be because you've had a past life experience there. And Jill and I hear this, and we turn and we turn our heads and look at each other like, isn't that interesting? Because we were just talking about that the night before. And then she talks about some other things, and then she says, and if you've ever wondered if pets have souls and if they can come through in a reading, yes, they can. Anything living has a soul, is made of energy, and they can come through in a reading. Again, Jill and I turn our heads all owl-like. We look at each other. It's like she was there with us, right? So then she comes down the steps, and she's standing in the front row. And she starts by saying, now, if I say something that you think relates to you, please stand up, and spirit will help me determine if you're the person that I'm supposed to be reading for today.
Also, the people in your party should stand up with you. She does say that.
She does say that. So the first thing she says is that she's getting the name Eileen, L with an L, Eileen. Now, you know, and I know, and many of our listeners know, that we have a grandma, Irene, with an R. right? But right away, Jill, you were like, you almost stood up, and I have my hand on your shoulder. I'm like, no, it's not us. And you're like, hey, that's us. And I'm like, no, it's not us. And so she keeps saying Eileen. I'm hearing an Eileen. Nobody else claims that name, but she moves on. And actually, I think she reads for somebody else, right? In like the first or second row or something, whatever. Right. So Eileen is still hanging there. There's no resolution. And then she says that she sees the initials J. Now, obviously, I'm Jennifer. Jill is Jill. And now, again, you are like popping out of your seat, and I'm holding you back like, no, it might not be us. And you're like, oh, I think it's us. And then Kim, nothing, nobody stands up. She's like J and a J, and then Eileen. And then she says Elizabeth. And then there was no holding you back at that point. You're like, I'm going.
Because my middle name,
stand up.
My middle name is Elizabeth. So I'm like, this is us. I can't take it anymore. So Jennifer, I break free from her grasp, and I'm like, it's me. I'm like, Kim. Hey.
Now, what we didn't mention is that Kim has 2 camera people on either side of her. And the setup is we're in this auditorium in the middle of a casino, and then there's this huge screen. So everything that the camera people are shooting is showing up on the screen. So now Jill is huge.
Larger than life.
Like much larger than life, right up on the screen. And I'm like, oh my God, we're doing it. We're doing this. But Jill stands up, and then someone else, an Elizabeth, stands up. So now we have 2 people, right? And you exercised a lot of restraint, and you did not beat up the other Elizabeth because you were so sure
it was totally
that
us.
The reading was for us.
Totally.
So at that point, Kim says, Spirit will decide who I'm supposed to talk to. And so she comes now and rounds the corner and walks up the aisle of the seating area. And she's looking at Jill, and she's looking at this other Elizabeth, and she's quiet for a minute. And then she says, who brought the stone in their wallet? And then I'm like, all right, Jill, sit down, because we both know you left those crystals, those stones at your house. And all of a sudden, Jill yells, oh my God. She opens up, and she's on camera, and she's on screen, this huge jumbo screen. She's shaking. She's holding her purse. She takes out her wallet. She goes into her wallet, and she holds up, as if it were like Simba, baby Simba. She holds up this big opal stone, and the crowd goes, and Jill passes it, one person to the next, down to the end where Kim takes it and holds it up, and everybody is silent in this auditorium. And it is very clear that the reading was for us, because Jill had this stone in her wallet and had forgotten about it until that moment when Kim asked who had it. So that other Elizabeth was a little bitter.
She was very sad.
Down.
But Jennifer was
sad.
Supposed to stand up, but Jennifer isn't standing up. So I have to pull Jennifer at like the back of her shirt. I was like, get up. I was like, Kim Russo, you told us to stand up, and my sister isn't standing up. This is Jennifer. So I pull her up like a rabbit out of a hat.
You lifted me up by the neck. Yeah, exactly. So now we're both on this jumbo screen feeling really uncomfortable. And you gift the crystal, the opal to Kim, because she says it's beautiful, and you're like, I would love for you to have it. Like, you were so emotional, and I was embarrassed. And she said thank you, and she took it very graciously. And then she turns to you, Jill, and she says, you're a psychic medium too.
I was so excited.
And if you recall, that was a question that you had. And then the way she stands changes, and she kind of like squats a little bit and squares off, like Grandma used to stand and square off. She holds her left hand in a fist, and her right hand like she's holding a needle, and she starts sewing like she's darning a sock. And doing that was exactly how Grandma used to sit at her kitchen table and darn socks. So she starts doing that, and she says, I'm getting your grandmother. And you and I are like crying now.
Well,
we're
Jennifer's
crying.
hysterical.
And we're on the Jumbotron.
Oh my God. Jennifer is like seriously crying like wet.
Anyway, so it's Grandma. Clearly it's Grandma. And Kim picks up her hand then, And it's like she's picking something up and moving it out of the way. And she goes, your grandma's doing this with your father. She's taking him out of your life and moving him somewhere else. Now, for Kim to even go there, to just mention dad, like out of the blue, he was, if you're thinking about like the family members in our lives, he was the one that was least like present and close to us. So for her to go right to dad was weird. So we're like, yes, that's very, very true. And then she says, I don't predict people's deaths, but your father is either very, very close to crossing over or he has just crossed over. Again, super weird because that was the question that we posed the night before. And then she says to us, do you have any questions for me? And we were both shocked. And all we could say was, no, you answered all our questions. I think this situation is so pivotal for me personally, because I realized that we brought that reading about by asking Grandma the night before to show up. And it was around that time after Grandma passed that I was starting to come to terms with my own personal psychic power. And to have that happen with you there was validating. And also I realized there's real power in setting an intention, and it feels even stronger when I do it with you.
Thank you. My takeaway from that situation is that Grandma, for me, is not only paying attention to us, but she's actively working on our behalves to help us, even in the most ridiculous ways. You know what I mean? Like, this wasn't a life or death situation. This was just her. It was almost like her flexing her muscles and letting us know, like, not only was she there, but she's helping us. And all we had to do is ask.
I love that.
I really do feel like that.
I love that. Totally. Well said. And also, I just want to say we did have meet and greet tickets, and we met Kim Russo afterwards. And she is just the loveliest person and the real deal. So watch Kim Russo.
Jennifer scared her bodyguards. Jennifer scared me. Like, Jennifer was so flipping excited to see her. Like, the bodyguards came rushing at us like Secret Service. I was like, it's okay. She's fine. And she goes, oh, my sisters. And I was like, oh my God, I love you
I know. Anyway, that was totally
cool. You know what else came from that experience? After Kim Russo, I remember calling Mom on the way home, and I was like, I'm a psychic medium. And Mom was like, is that what we're calling it? I was like, uh-huh. And so I was like, that is true. And so it gave me the opportunity to seek out strangers to really practice my craft. And it was that up until that time, I was only really reading in a non-formal way for like my friends and family. I really developed a relationship and tried to have an understanding of how I was communicating and how people were communicating on the other side. And it was almost a year to the day later that Mom died. And because I had that experience, I was able to know when Mom was talking to me after she died. I was able to continue my relationship with Mom.
Wow. So that was really pivotal for you on a personal level too. So then the last story we wanted to share, and which is really the origin story of our podcast, is you and I would go out on adventures. Sometimes we would walk places, sometimes we would drive, and what we were doing was we were picking up on psychic impressions, and then we would use each other to validate those impressions. So we might go to a cemetery, and I would say, I'm feeling this. And you would say, I'm not. I'm feeling this. Or, yes, I am feeling this. I'm also feeling this. So we kind of used each other as a sounding board to practice.
Right.
And it was in 2019.
Well, let me tell you this. At the time, one of my best friends and I were like, we need to do a podcast. And it was like, we were talking about that. And then another friend of mine who I met in a psychic community was like, we should do a podcast. So I told Jennifer, like, oh yeah, my friend and this friend want to do a podcast with me. And then Jennifer was like, do you think we can do a podcast together? And I was like, Jennifer,
that's not what happened.
Literally what happened.
That is not how I remember it. I remember you saying, Jennifer, will you do a podcast with me? Jennifer, will you do a podcast with me? And me saying, no, Jill, I do not want to do a podcast with you. I don't like my voice recorded. And I have nothing to say to you.
Telling stories, that's the one.
I-
No, you were kidding around at first, and you put it out there, and then I was like, well, if you're serious, yeah, let's do it.
Anyway,
she
but we
wasn't.
didn't really have a concept.
No, we didn't have a concept. And she wasn't serious because she didn't know.
We didn't have a concept.
And she was like, what are we going to talk about?
But we did keep going, on these adventures
Because
together.
it's fun. That's what we
so
did.
it was 2019.
That's our bonding.
It is. We did it for entertainment.
What's funny about it is that like people would be like, "Oh, what did you do at Jennifer's house?" And I'm like, "Oh, we went to a cemetery," and they're like, "Oh,
Oh.
we went to the
Totally.
cemetery, then we came home, did tarot, and got drunk." What'd you do?
Pretty much. That's what we still do, really. Only now we bring cameras.
Aw.
Anyway, so 2019, you come over to my house. We're bored. We're like, oh, let's, drive around, see what we can find. We end up driving to Seneca, Illinois, and we stop at a church. St. Patrick's in Seneca, Illinois has this grotto of the Blessed Mother, the Virgin Mary, and there's a sign there that indicates that there was a slaughter, that a Native American group killed
The first Catholic martyr in Illinois.
killed a priest who was now considered to be the very first Catholic martyr in the state of Illinois. So that was weird that we just kind of like came upon this, major event on that very site. And then we were driving around.
No, we found a mill. Remember the mill? There was this big red, what looked to be an abandoned building right off of railroad tracks. And we pull in there and we just, the energy of the space just seemed like it was vibrating and we knew something was there. And we approached the mill and there was a way in, like one of the bays was open and it was just black. And Jen and I were like, remember that?
Something, but yeah.
We're
that
like,
was
we are
really
not
creepy.
going in there.
We are not going in that mill.
But it felt like there was something stirred up, if that makes sense. There was something stirred up about this town, not just at the church and also at the mill. So now we're curious. We're like, well, what the hell is going on at this town? So then we get back in the car and we drive and we find the cemetery.
Now, the cemetery is the creepiest cemetery that I've ever found with you because the land itself was almost like it was swallowing the graves. It was buckling in very strange ways, and it just gave me the creepiest vibes. You too?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was on a hill, and it had like this really steep staircase that reminded me of The Exorcist. It was like a weird vibe. And at this point, we noticed that the gravestones, there was a lot of people that died like untimely. Like a lot of young people. There were families.
At the same time.
Yes.
Right. So there'd be like a group of gravestones all with the same death date. And we're like, what is happening? But not just one. Like there'd be different pods of like these tombstones where people died prematurely and many of them seemingly from the same thing. So we were like, what is even happening? So you start Googling on your phone.
Absolutely.
Tragedies.
I had enough. Yes. Seneca, Illinois tragedies. And it's like tragedy after tragedy after tragedy is coming up on my phone, like murder, suicide, car accidents. It's just like random crazy things. And I'm like, what the hell? So then I'm like, well, what if I just said any other town in Illinois?
Town.
Yeah.
Right.
Random town, Illinois tragedy. So I start naming towns and nothing like that comes up. So I'm like, dude, there is something here. So I'm sharing the information with Jen.
And we're standing there in the cemetery looking at your phone. And all of a sudden I look up and I see 2 hawks and a baby hawk. And that's when I realized that was spirit coming to us at that moment. Specifically, hawk is your sign for mom, right?
Mm-hmm. And the hawk had its 2 babies with it.
And so I said to you, is this our podcast?
And I was
and
like,
we looked at each
shut
other.
up. This is totally our podcast.
And so that's when we knew, like, concept of our podcast was what we had been doing for years.
Mm-hmm.
Finding different places using our psychic abilities and then, and this was the twist, researching them to find validation, not just from each other, but from actual sources. And so that's how it started. Are you glad you're on this journey with me?
Oh my God, I love it so much. This is so much fun. I'm learning so much.
Me too. And it is fun. And I hope our listeners think it's fun too.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this bonus pod. If you like what you heard, check out our website, commonmystics.net. Follow us on Facebook. You can subscribe to us on Spotify, Google Pod, Stitcher, and Apple Podcasts, where you can leave us a positive review, like Luke Train 6.
Luke Train 6 wrote, so insightful. Not only do their stories give me goosebumps, but the connection between these two sisters can't be denied when you listen to their conversations flow so easily between each other. Thank you, Luke Train 6.
Thank you, Luke. We really appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening. Good night.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.